Well, blimey. Here we are once more at the tail end of the year, scratching our heads and wondering where the last 12 months went. The annual reset of the Gregorian calendar is a time for reflection, analysis, and, depending on how things went, nihilistic despair, ritual alcohol abuse, and a final push towards type 2 diabetes. It's that time of year when we all gaze thoughtfully backwards, and our outlook largely depends on how many laps around the sun we've completed. The young and responsibility-free amongst us might dream of conquering mountains, while the rest of us wonder if our knees will make it up the stairs this evening. Been an eventful year in every way, but since this is primarily a photography channel, I thought it'd be cool to look back at the big photography-related trends and perhaps see if there's a clue as to what 2025 will bring. One thing's for certain: the more tools we get to enhance reality, the harder it's getting to find any. So, farewell then 2024, and to the 5,200 of you who subscribed to my channel this year, a huge thank you. And to my regulars, I raise a frosty glass of vodka and coke in your direction and offer a hearty cheers, mates. This has been a challenging year for photographers and for photography in general, whether it's produced by hobbyists or professionals. In an era of a revolutionary camera gear and boundless creative tools, photography paradoxically stands at its most vulnerable moment. One subject absolutely dominated the photographic world, and it was, of course, the hydraulic-powered tripod. No, wait, I mean AI. Yes, if 2024 is remembered for anything in the photography scene, it wasn't ridiculous gimmicks peddled by million-plus influencers. It was AI with everything. Hardware and software companies indulged in an arms race to automate every single aspect of taking and processing photos. Sony led the way with in-camera technology, of course, and their in-camera AI autofocus system on the full-frame models. It's so advanced it can track a beetle's bunghole from 50 meters away through a snowdrift. Fortunately, you have to spend big bucks to enjoy Sony's AI autofocus. In 2024, the recently released A6100 demonstrated their magical tracking abilities too. As a Fuji shooter, all I have to say is manual focus rocks. But the real AI action was happening in software, and most of the well-known developers jumped at the opportunity, rapidly incorporating machine learning and generative AI into their apps. Adobe's AI upgrades for 2024 were something of a mixed bag. Their Firefly generative algorithm was upgraded, but not enough to not suck. They did up their AI denoising game, bringing Lightroom's enhanced tool to within a gnat's chuff of reigning champions DxO and their XD2 denoising model. Adobe's AI masking, upgraded in 2024, is the best on the market, but it's a long way from perfect, and you relied on the unchecked accuracy of those masks at your peril. On One continued their pivot into AI with the release of PhotoRAW 2025 and a suite of AI tools that nearly rivaled those in Luminar Neo. Even Capture One upped its AI game with an AI people masking tool that would have been innovative had it not photocopied a people masking tool that Lightroom's had for 2 years. Meanwhile, DxO restricted their AI efforts to denoising with the release of the XD2S algorithm, which further improved their already industry best software. Not many companies are using machine learning for search, though. In fact, it's only French developer Pig2 and German company XR who are doing anything substantial in terms of AI search tools for photographers. In many ways, 2024 was the year in which developers pushed their apps in one of two widely diverging directions. They either went all in on features, particularly AI ones, or they kept things purely traditional. One thing became certain over the course of this year: AI in particular was not everything that it promised to be. One phrase entered the common photographic lexicon in 2024, the decidedly romantic sounding generative fill. Not to be confused with Philip, the neighborhood drug dealer. Generative fill was big on promise but light on delivery. The best results for this kind of in-painting were actually to be found in the full-blown AI services like Stability AI and Midjourney, and not expensive photo editors. Photoshop, Lightroom, PhotoRaw, Luminanio, Photo AI, and even Canva gained generative fill capabilities, but the technology has some way to go before it's ready for anything other than erasing that Eastern European pickpocket from your photos you shot on holiday in Paris. AI upscaling has matured surprisingly quickly, however. Several of the big apps absolutely nailed this useful feature. Topaz Gaiba Pixel and Photomator deserving the highest marks, along with the free online upscaled of org service. And while the power of AI to select, to mask, to expand, to enlarge, and to replace was apparently a big hit with photographers, it did leave to one big problem. The maxim of the camera never lies hasn't been valid for a long time, if it ever was, but it's never been less true today, and that has led to something of an authenticity crisis. As generative AI systems grow increasingly powerful, it's getting harder and harder to spot the fakes. The really obvious tells, the extra fingers and Doc Ock star superfluous limbs, are less common these days. That plasticky sheen is harder to spot, and the uncanny valley, those vacant eyes and blank stares, even those are starting to disappear. We're not far from the point where even the experts won't be able to tell actual photographs from generative AI imagery. However, the real problem that surfaced in 2024 was even more troubling. We discovered that actually most people couldn't give a flying fuck that it's AI. They'll like and heart emoji the most improbable rainbow spectrum coloured turd-looking baby birds in a nest, sad-looking African kids building life-size elephants out of plastic water bowls, and bullshit geologists discovering bullshit statues of bullshit astronauts on bullshit archaeological digs. But show them a chart that says the planet's overheating and they'll cry fake. There's a growing debate over real versus AI generated images, but it's not a universal debate. Dear me, no. Only the creatives, the photographers, the artists, the filmmakers, the authors, the musicians, you know, the folks who produce the original material all this bullshit AI is built on, they're the only ones that care. There were some measures put in place in 2024 to, somewhat hilariously, try and hold back the tsunami of AI-generated content. In October, Adobe added a content credentials option to Photoshop and Lightroom, which enables you to attach your identity and contact information to your work, but more pertinently, to embed details of any AI embellishments. OpenAI released their Sora video generation platform and promised that all video created with the system would have C2PA metadata embedded within it. Since that metadata can be easily removed, it's also utterly pointless. Taking a look at the growth of AI on Google Trends this year reveals an interesting insight that does give me a glimmer of hope. All those fake photo-looking images and fake video clips are already being used extensively for domestic disinformation, societal destabilization, and state-mandated propaganda purposes. The most interest in AI, according to Google, is actually in those countries experiencing rapid technological change. Many are part of Asia's tech boom or emerging economies looking to leverage AI for development. So there's that. While AI continues to steamroll its way over every single facet of human creativity, it has sparked an intriguing counter-trend and uptick in interest in analog film photography. Looking at the Google Trends data for the search term film camera, we can see that in late 2023, it was less popular than Prince Andrew at Girl Guide's camp. But by the end of this year, interest had risen faster than global property rental fees. I think there are two things pushing this particular trend towards old analog stuff. Firstly, I think it's a reaction to AI and a desire among creative folks for a real experience which is completely removed from digital mechanisms. Secondly, I think it's a generational resurgence being led primarily by Gen Z, kids born around the turn of the millennium who missed out on all the old analog technologies. And the stuff that used to irritate the living shit out of grizzly old Gen Xers like me are, believe it or not, actually a big part of the appeal to Gen Zers like my 22-year-old son. They like the crackle of a vinyl record and the process of taking that record out of its sleeve and putting it on a turntable. They like the process of loading a camera with a roll of film and having a maximum of 36 shots to play with, and of developing and printing that film. They're drawn to analog technology's inherent quirks and inconsistencies. Not a betting man, I put good money on the return of roller discos, VHS movie nights, boomboxes, CB radio, and hanging out at the shopping centre or mall. Back in the day, we also used to have subscriptions for everything from magazines to book clubs. And guess what? They're back too. If there's one subject that unites photographers across the planet, it's a universal hatred of software subscription plans. Everything came to a head in mid-2024 when there was a heap of negative press about Adobe. Adobe faced a barrage of vitriol with content creators across the platform posting videos declaring their permanent exodus from the software. And while many vowed never to return, I'm willing to bet a sizable percentage did. And while Adobe's shares recently fell the most they have in over 2 years, it had bugger all to do with the pushback against their expensive plans. They actually recorded record revenues, but due to market fears over, yes, you guessed it, AI. One thing's for sure, if Adobe are hoping to reassure the market that they're not going to become a corporate footnote, then they need to try a bloody sight harder than Firefly, which is far and away the weakest generative AI system of them all. Adobe achieved a staggering $21 billion in revenue in 2024, and perhaps if they spent a bit more money on their piss-weak AI models and a bit less on CEO Shantanu Narayan's $45 billion annual salary, they might start to compete with Stability and Midjourney. And while Adobe were in the crosshairs this year, it does bear pointing out that they're hardly alone in the subscription scalping business. Every bastard's at it. Capture One, Photo Raw, Photolab, Luminar, and ACDC, for instance, all have subscription plans. And in the case of Luminar and Photolab, a fairly mercenary attitude to those plans that blocks new features unless you pay extra. I love DxO Photolab. It's my favorite RAW editor by some margin. But blocking access to the brand new luminosity mask unless you buy the Film Pack preset add-on, sorry guys, but that's a dick move. During the big Adobe pile-on in mid-2024, there was a lot of talk about moving to cheaper single-price applications like those produced by small British developer Serif. You couldn't move here on YouTube without seeing a video from one content creator or another singing the praises of Affinity Photo designer and publisher. I think they're good apps. I bought and paid for all three of them myself, but let's be honest, it's a lot more complicated than Affinity good, Adobe bad, and the hallowed place that that trio of Affinity apps hold in the hearts of anti-Adobe creatives. Sticking it to the man by buying from a small independent developer was somewhat shaken when Serif was bought by Canva, a $40 billion company with over 220 million active Yeah, you guessed it, subscription-paying users. There were, of course, the usual promises that the Affinity apps would remain single purchase and subscription-free, and I genuinely hope they keep those promises. But I certainly wouldn't be betting against it. It wasn't just the Affinity apps that disappeared in the fetid bowels of massive tech corporations. In November, the Pixelmator team, producers of much-loved Pixelmator Pro and Photomator apps for Mac, iPad and iPhone, were bought by Apple. It was easy to see why Apple would get the corporate Apple card out. The apps regularly won awards and were amongst the most Apple-looking non-Apple apps on the market. After the dark sky disappointment, when Apple vacuumed up and annihilated the much-loved weather app, everyone's feared the worst. If you read the announcement, the Pixelmator team have made absolutely no promises regarding the long-term future of the apps. They've only said there will be no material changes at this time. The one thing providing some solace to Pixelmator users is that this might, perhaps, herald the return of Apple to the photo editing market and might, perhaps, signal the arrival of a new aperture. Pretty please? The market forces driving those software acquisitions are at play in different ways in the hardware space too, particularly in the increasingly competitive consumer drone market. Drones are everywhere at the moment, freaking people out in New Jersey, flying into army barracks in Russia, replacing traditional firework displays, being scaled up and flown around by humans, forwarding environmental research, geomapping building sites, flitting around on Mars, and most importantly of all, delivering Krispy Kreme donuts to suburban mansions. The world of drones has been in a state of flux in 2024, not because there was any major new player on the market, but because protectionist American politicians decided they didn't want no stinking Chinese drone company monopolizing the US market. In a highly politicized and transparently calculated move, a Republican member of Congress, Elise Stefanik, introduced a bill called Countering CCP Drones Act, which was allegedly brought to life with the aid of an ex-Skydio executive. It's pretty grubby stuff, if I'm being honest, and somewhat hilarious from the country that has capitalism written into its constitution. Whatever happened to the concepts of innovation and competition? Clearly that's just for the other countries. We reached peak drone some time ago, and the upgrades and model revisions are now evolutionary rather than revolutionary. But there's nothing stopping someone else from producing flying cameras that are as reliable and of the same quality. And get me wrong, I'm not saying that DJI aren't a mercenary company. They'll clearly do everything they can to protect their ridiculous market share. The manipulation of high subscriber count YouTube channels and influencer content on Instagram and TikTok is a half-yearly masterclass in manipulation, but there's nothing stopping anyone from using the methods from the same playbook. The DJI Neo, released in 2024, is a case in point. It's a 4K camera drone built for content creators who are only interested in easily shooting aerial footage of themselves or their immediate surrounds, not necessarily in the drone technology or that whole flight experience. And why did DJI suddenly decide to produce an idiot-proof 4K semi-autonomous drone? Because Hoverair's X1 Pro was proving to be a hit, steadily building its own niche. That's why. Exactly the same reason why they're rolling out the Osmo 360. It's a direct answer to the much-loved Insta360X. Meanwhile, the innovations in the traditional drone range are much less exciting. And unless you're a professional drone pilot, there are fewer and fewer reasons to upgrade your existing model each year. I mean, I'm still using the Mavic 2 Pro, and I still haven't seen any footage or photographs that have convinced me to bench my 6-year-old faithful friend. There's never been a better time to buy a drone, particularly if you're a photographer, with incredibly high quality drones available at literally all price points. But global regulations and legislation passed in 2024 has shown that you'll only experience freedom in the skies if you build your own. As consumer drones fight for their niche in the global market, smartphones continue to democratize photography. The ascent of the smartphone camera completely devastated the point and shoot camera market, with sales dropping a staggering 94% over the course of just a couple of years. And while generations Z and Alpha are toying with the retro look of photos shot on those 20-year-old point and shoots, the planet's favorite camera is still the one they have on their phone. It's staggering just how powerful smartphone cameras are now. The Samsung S24 Ultra has a bloody 200 megapixel sensor in it, for God's sakes. Although, funny enough, you'll get the best quality shots from that sensor by shooting in 12 megapixels due to the quality gains from pixel binning. The computational revolution rolled out with mixed results. Automatic HDR, low light optimization, AI-driven color correction all appeared in the latest generation of phones. But there is clearly a market for computational free photography, because Halide 2 photo app's pseudo-computational free Process Zero mode proved to be a big hit with photographers, even if it wasn't quite as unmachined as we'd initially been led to believe. Camera manufacturers got into an arms race, one-upping each other on features, but the crown in 2024 had to go to Vivo and their X100 Pro, which had a dedicated astrophotography mode complete with real-time star alignment assistance. It's just mental. In terms of hardware, periscope zoom lenses like the ones in the Huawei P60 Pro served up an amazing 10 times optical zoom, while the Oppo Find X7 Ultra doubled the fun with dual periscope telephoto lenses in a quad camera setup. But you'll never get close to the quality of a full-blown handheld camera as long as you can't properly control the aperture, right? In April 2024, Huawei released the Pura 70 Ultra, which had, you guessed it, a variable aperture range from f1.6 to f4. Apple's response to the massive sensors and impressive telephotos on Android smartphones was a new button. Yes, the camera control button was released on the iPhone 16, and feedback has been mixed. Some folks loved the enhanced functionality and quick access to camera modes and zooms. Others found it unintuitive and redundant, particularly left-handed people. It wasn't just the hardware, of course. Apple and Google indulged in their annual game of one-upmanship with the Magic Editor released with the Pixel 9 Pro, and the cleanup feature with the iPhone 16. Apple also rebooted filters with their new photographic styles, and in fact the whole niche of presets enjoyed a busy 2024 with all new adaptive presets in Lightroom, Film Pack 7 from DxO, Nik Collection Analog FX also from DxO and Luminar. And if you couldn't find a preset, then 2024 was also the year when photo matching went mainstream. Photoshop, Pixelmator Pro, Capture One, Luminar, and On One Photo Raw all gained the ability to mimic the color grade on a reference image. Who did it best? They're all pretty good at it, but Photoshop's matched color in the neural filters did it most effectively. And that was just a small slice of what happened in the world of photography in 2024. I'm no Nostradamus, but I'll hazard a bet that AI is going to figure heavily in photography in terms of hardware and software in 2025. The buzz at the moment is around the concept of agentic AI, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if one of the developers created an AI buddy for your photo app that suggests edits for you and then helps you facilitate them. The lines between fiction and reality will continue to blur as the teams behind LLMs, machine learning, and generative systems seek ever more inventive ways of removing humans completely from the creative process. I wouldn't be remotely surprised if a stock agency or two merged or folded. Most of them already flogged the family silver to the AI companies for training the models we're all now using. And with nobody in their right minds buying actual stock photography anymore, They're just custodians of a rapidly aging photo archive which no photographer will submit to because they pay sweet FA in royalties. Given recent developments at Apple isn't outside the realms of possibility for them to re-enter the serious photo editing market, those of us who still mourn the loss of aperture certainly wouldn't complain. And as to cameras, honestly, we reached peak camera about 4 years ago, and the argument for upgrading every few years is looking pretty thin right now. My advice, given the fact that the cost of living crisis is only going to get worse, is to sit tight and use the excellent camera equipment you already own. Cameras don't take great photographs, good photographers do. And that will do us for this look back at 2024, the photographic and drone world. How was your 24? Are you at the bottom of the curve or heading up towards a peak? Let me know in the comments section below. Wish you all a healthy and prosperous and happy 2025. And hope you'll be able to join me here for more photo, video and drone related content delivered with a wink and the occasional swear word. Till the next time, guys. Ta-ta.